Have you ever wondered why so many movies and TV shows feel less alive than they used to? Part of the problem starts before anything is filmed. It begins with script readers and how scripts are being judged on the page. When I was first trained as a script reader back in the 90s, we were taught to remove our ego from the analysis. Today, script readers are mistakenly encouraged to not only indulge their ego, but to focus almost solely on their self-referential experience. They're asking, was this screenplay fun to read? When they should be asking, will this text come alive when it's actually performed? Those are not the same thing. The StoryRay way helps elevate a dramatic script beyond attractive people simply saying words on a page, which too often is what film and television have become today. Our methodology is built around making sure a script is not merely a pleasurable reading experience, but that it inspires. Effective dramatic writing must inspire actors, directors, designers, editors, composers, and other artists to reach heights even the writer may not have imagined. More important than giving one solitary script reader a fun read is leaving room for the full collaborative experience that is film and television creation. It goes beyond literary pleasures to transform the written word into something alive. Today, too much emphasis is placed on whether a screenplay is a pleasurable reading experience instead of whether it is designed to be performed. A screenplay is not a novel. It is not prose fiction. It is not meant to live only on the page. Drama literally means to do, as in doing, not just reading, to perform. Dramatic writing may have literary qualities, but it is not literature. But the modern script reading culture has blurred that distinction. A lot of readers now judge a script solely by whether they enjoyed reading it rather than whether they can imagine it being brought to life by actors, directors, images, sound, rhythm, and performance. Because of human nature, once we indulge the ego and allow it to factor into a judging or analysis or evaluation process, the ego takes over and predominates all other elements. When script readers use I and me in terms of how much they enjoy their reading experience, it transforms a text intended for a mass audience and reduces it to the lens of a single person's biased experience. The best way to remedy this is to limit the indulgence of ego as much as possible. An ego is often tied directly to a person's pleasure center. In most cases, humans don't use their ego sparingly, as it has a tendency to spill over, predominating all areas it touches. For modern script readers, the ego is often the primary judge in evaluating scripts as potential movies and TV shows. And that shift has changed screenwriting. Desperate screenplay writers have shifted their focus from writing for a performance intended for mass consumption and instead choosing to focus on pleasing the script reader, who is usually the lowest person on the totem pole for a reason. The screenplay shifts from being a functional document intended to inspire other artists and instead becomes a literary reading experience like a book with strange margins. As a result, when those words are performed by actors, the narrative fails to come alive and instead simply becomes information sharing, a hallmark of today's TV and movies. It has pushed screenplays toward being more informative, more polished, sometimes even more pleasing to read, but most of the time also less dramatic, especially when it comes to dialogue. Good dialogue on the page is not always the same as good dialogue in performance. Some lines look plain when you read them, but come alive in the mouth of the right actor. Other lines read beautifully, but die the second someone has to say them out loud. If you go back and read some classic screenplays, many of them are not especially pleasurable reads by today's standards. They can be sparse. They can feel overly instructive. They can feel incomplete in some ways. But the movies made from them were often vibrant, memorable, alive. They were dramatic. They moved. Drama means to do, and they did. They didn't just read nicely on the page. Now, can a screenplay be both dramatic and enjoyable to read? Of course it can. But once ego-based reader enjoyment enters the equation, it dominates as ego-based things tend to do, and it becomes the main measurement and crowds out everything else. Human nature being what it is, if a reader is having fun, they may assume the script is working. If they are not having fun, they may assume the script is failing. But that is not always true. Judging a screenplay only by how fun it is to read is like measuring people's height when you are trying to determine their weight. Sure, there may be some correlation. Longer bones tend to weigh more. But they are not the same thing. A screenplay has to be read in order to be understood, yes. But the intended audience will never read the script. Reading is not the proper measure for that story. The audience will watch the movie. How will it perform is the question. And whether something is fun to read is not the same as whether something is inspiring to other artists, which translates into something powerful or impactful to watch. There can be overlap, but not always. Until script readers relearn that a pleasing read does not automatically equal a good movie, the quality of dramatic storytelling will continue on a downward swing, especially dialogue. Because if all it takes to make a good dramatic story is a fun read, then why not just film the reading and acting out novels? Why not just shoot prose fiction version of the story? The answer is because dramatic writing is its own craft. And learning how to read and evaluate dramatic writing is different from reading for pleasure. It is about behavior, conflict, subtext, timing, silence, physical action, performance triggers. It is about what happens between people, not just what sounds good in a paragraph in a single reader's head. Historically, reading scripts was supposed to be difficult, sometimes even unpleasant. No one approached the task of reading screenplays looking for a mostly pleasurable experience. It was work. The point was not for the reader to be entertained and like their job. The point was to recognize what could possibly become a successful movie or TV show. But now, too many readers seem to want the screenplay itself to give them the finished emotional experience like fine literature. They want another hit of dopamine, and they want it now. They want the movie to already be happening in their head with little effort, kind of like a novel. And if it does not, they assume the script will not work when performed as it was intended. But that is a failure of imagination. A script is not the final product. A script is the inspiration for the final product. And when script readers forget that, writers start chasing ego-affirming validation on the page, instead of sharing their plan for building a dramatic experience that far exceeds the written words.